friends in Sasquatch land. Tuesday night once again here at Discover Sasquatch Studios. And do we have another great show for you tonight? We have Mr. Mark Green from Alabama with us tonight. Sasquatch on the farm. I got to talk to Mark a little bit last night, get to know him, and an hour is not gonna be enough for Mr. Green, that's for sure. Man's very knowledgeable in the Sasquatch realm. He's had many interactions, and we were very honored to have him on the show. So we have a great show for you guys tonight. Just want to say hello to people in the chat. Hello, Sharon. Hello, Blue Eyed Northern. Brown Dwarf is with us tonight. BF Bud is in the house. Boots on the ground with Barb. How is everybody doing on this Tuesday night? We just had some serious. Oh, Flat Rock is in the house too. Hello, Mr. Flat Rock. So we got a good show for you tonight. I'm very excited to have him on the show. I just would like to make one announcement, very brief, very quick, before we continue here and bring Mr. Green out. And here it is. Starting in August, I will have a radio show on Thursdays at 6 o'clock on KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. It's going to be called Discover Sasquatch Live, and it's going to be just like this channel here. I'm going to do the YouTube channel, keep this going, and I will be on the radio, and I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited, and I'm very happy to get that opportunity. All right, well, that's enough about me. So without further ado, let's bring out Mr. Mark Green. Hello, my new friend, Mr. Green. How are you tonight?
Pretty good. How are you, Chris?
I'm doing well. Good. I'm glad to have you here, and I'm sure everybody's excited to have you here also. I can't wait to hear more and more about what you got going on down there in Alabama. I have to admit, I bought a Atlanta Braves hat because I thought you were from Georgia. So my guess, but I definitely blew it. And you guys don't have no baseball teams in Alabama, do you?
Most of the people in Alabama do root for Atlanta. I root for St. Louis because my dad played for St. Louis for 1 year as a relief pitcher in 1948. So when he came out of World War II. So I'm a St. Louis fan. But I do like the Atlanta Braves too.
That's awesome though to have you.
And I got a guy at work that really keeps up with it. So I hear all about it all the time.
It's pretty cool to have a dad that played in the major leagues. That's awesome. So let's get things started. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, how you got into the Sasquatch scene, and what do you got going on lately?
Well, of course, my name's Mark Green. Living here in East Central Alabama, near the little town of Silicaga. Just born and raised here. Been farming, hunting, fishing, trapping all my life. When I got grown, went to school to become a maintenance man, millwright. Now / I'm a robot technician with one of the automobile manufacturers here in Alabama. And so my field's been maintenance most of my life. And still doing some farming. Me and my wife have a small homestead here in Alabama. So just that type of stuff. Still do a lot of hunting, fishing when time permits, and don't do no trapping anymore because it's hard to do that around here. But and then just a lot of other things I like to do. Of course, Bigfoot's one of them.
Yeah. So why don't you tell a little about you before we get into about your YouTube channel and before we move forward?
Okay. Yeah, me and my wife have a homestead channel. She does most of the work. She's very good at it. She's getting a lot better at it than I am. But ours is about homesteading, ways to grow food, be more self-reliant, but also with the push of a lot of friends, regular friends and friends in the Bigfoot world, A lot of them told me I needed to start talking about the stuff that went on Creepy Mountain, and also the other research and investigations I've done with Keith Tyler and various other people over the years. So started that here a few months ago. We're starting to get into Creepy Mountain pretty good, what's went on up there. And there's going to be some good stuff coming. You know, some very detailed stuff coming. So it's it's a big world. And I've been to a lot of other places in Alabama and a few other states. Met a lot of good people in the Bigfoot world. A lot of good people. There's good-hearted people and very truthful and want to help each other. And that's what I'm about. That's one reason I do it on the Homestead channel is people that are living out in the rural areas or semi-rural areas and right up next to town, because these things go in towns too. I've got several reports of downtown Chicago, Chillsburg, right outside of Birmingham. And I've heard of other reports of them being in other towns. So they do frequent towns. But on my homesteading channel, I won't let people to hear that, because if you're raising food and you have livestock, there's a good chance these may show up on your property sooner or later. And they're about the easiest meal they want. They're after the easiest meal they can get. So, I mean, a homestead's real simple. Stuff they can get. So. And a lot of the people I've got reports from actually were people who lived out in rural areas that had homesteads or small farms. That's a lot of the people that were getting a lot of the stuff going on that I investigated over the years.
So what got you started into looking for Sasquatch? What was your first interaction with the kicker that got your interest?
Well, in 2007, me and two friends of mine, which Keith Tyler was one of them, the other friend was named Larry, we decided to go down to Lowndes County, Alabama, which is the county east of Selma, Alabama. I know everybody's probably heard of Selma, Alabama, because of the civil rights back in the 1960s. Alabama had purchased a big amount of land from Lyndon Johnson's wife, Lady Bird, what they used to call her. She was from Alabama, or her people were. They owned a bunch of land on the Alabama River, and the state purchased that property and turned it into a wildlife management area. We had went hunting down there in January of 07. Hunted all day, and then that evening I went and hunted me and the other two hunted a green patch. It was a very long green patch. Watched several deer walk into the green patch on my end, right there around 4 o'clock, and then about 4:15, 4:20, those two deer bolted out of there in the opposite direction, and they wasn't looking at me, and they never caught my smell. They kept looking behind me, and then that's when I kept hearing a racket, something moving slowly. I was sitting up against a big white oak tree that was big enough to cut my outline out, and I eased up and kind of peeped around that tree. Didn't see nothing for a minute, and then all of a sudden I see some movement, maybe 50, 60, 70 feet, something like that, from me. And first I thought it was somebody. Then I realized they didn't have hunter orange on, which is when you're deer hunting, that's a big no-no. You have hunter orange on. That struck me odd. Kept watching it, and then of course I did a boo-boo that you should never do. I raised my gun and looked through my scope at it. I should have had a pair of binoculars with me that day, and I didn't. And so I looked through the scope, and that's when I realized what I was looking at. I could see one side of the shoulder, the arm, part of the chest, part of the stomach area, and then part of the leg. It was all full of hair. I tried to look at it in the face several times when it'd peep out the tree. Just couldn't really get a good look at its face. It was just full of hair. this probably went on for maybe 10 or 15 seconds. Then all of a sudden it just dropped to all fours and it flew out of there. I never seen nothing move that quick. And it went back toward a big swamp. And I mean, I never seen nothing move that quick. It was faster than a deer moving out of there. And of course, not going to say I got scared. It was more like, what in the world, And then, of course, a few minutes later, fear did come in because it was getting close to dark. And I started heading out. And then I asked my two other guys I was hunting with, uh, did they see anything or hear anything? They said no. So, then, of course, from there, I went and logged in, looking up Bigfoot in Alabama. Came across the website alabamabigfoot.com by the late Matt Mullane. Found that he'd been keeping up with a lot of the sightings in Alabama, and sent him an email. And then from there, it just kind of grew, And so that's what got me interest, was actually seeing one. Then later on, I realized some of the other stuff I had happened in my life probably was the boogers, and just didn't realize it. Some of the stuff that went on during the years for me coon hunting and doing other various outdoor activities, having stuff happen or hearing sounds. So later on, I started figuring out that I was already having some interaction or encounters, just didn't really know what I was encountering.
Right. So after your episode in 2000 and 2007, what was the next step for you in this? What would I mean, you did computer research, you contacted. What was the next step? But were you out hunting for these guys, looking? I mean, everybody's got different hunting, looking, investigating. What was the next step for Mark on this journey?
Well, I kept researching the website. Back then, there was another one I think it was called Wildflowers and Jerky and Bigfoot in Alabama. I was paying attention to her website, and she had a lot of good sightings. I think she was down in South Alabama, somewhere down in there, close to where Flat Rock's at. Of course, Mr. Mac Lane was staying in touch with me a little bit, and then he had another guy that he worked with, Mr. Tall Banco from out in Arkansas, and he asked me could he call and talk to me. And of course, he's the one that really took my initial report of the Lowndes County, and when I got to talking to him is when I found out there'd been a lot of sightings in that area where I had seen that one. In fact, he had done frequent that area a bunch of times. There was a sportsman's lodge, what they call it, something sportsman's lodge. I won't say that, Bama Sporting Lodge. And he would go down there.
You froze up.
There's a magazine article in Alabama Game and Fish about a guy having a Bigfoot encounter right there in that area. So if people can go back and research it, I think it was called Stalked in Alabama. And I think it was January 1998 when that publication come out. And Alabama Game and Fish used to be a very popular outdoor magazine. I think like a lot of magazines, went under when the internet come out. But I think you can still find it on the web, though. But that's what kind of got me started. And then, of course, Mr. Tall came to the Sylacauga area to look at something else. That, in fact, when he called me, he asked me about this little town, and I said, "Well, yeah, it's 10 miles from me." And he said, "Oh, go good." So he said, "I'm gonna get to meet you and be there too." And we ended up meeting him back down in Lowndes County at the place I seen that one. We found where they had been going into a wild plum orchard. We found their tracks all in there where they've been eating the plums. So we went in June, and then we went over where I did see that one behind the tree, and he ended up finding tracks all down in there. They were freaking that area real big. There's some tracks that were 10 inches, some of them were, 14, 15. He said, and according to, what I've learned over time, some of these had curve in them, and he said that was probably a female, so that little one was probably her offspring. He said that was probably what I seen that day was a juvenile, because this one was probably around 6 foot, maybe 7 at the most. It wasn't a real big, and it was slender. Everybody always thinks these things are built up like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something. Not all of them's that way. Some of them are slender and lanky, real skinny. I believe that's one reason they can get behind a tree and hide good, because they're slim. Now, of course, when they get bigger, it might be a little harder for them to hide. But I think when they're smaller, they slim. I never have seen one that was real fat looking. They always look slim to me, more like a track runner, muscled up, but slim.
So when did you realize that they were close to home? When they were getting close to your activities, when you were like at the hunting club and stuff like that?
Okay. Well, when Mr. Tall came up, and we, met him down in Lowndes County, then he came over here to the small community not far from us, and I mentioned to him that sometimes we'd hear strange noises up on the hunting club and some different things that went on, and I told him what it was, and he said, "Well, that sounds like them." And so he said, "Well, can we go up there one night?" And I said, "Sure." So we went up there, and he had an elk call with him, and he said an elk call just if it's in a new area, you can blow on that with elk call, and he said they're gonna answer. He said they can't help it. So he blew on that elk call, and I'm telling you, the woods just came alive, probably 300-400 yards from us. The screaming, the hollering, and he looked over at us and he said, "Yeah, y'all got them, boys." And that kind of got it started, and then we started referring to him a lot, and he would tell us what to go do up there. In fact, he came up there and stayed a few times. He'd come up there and stay weeks at a time. He had a lot of stuff happen up there, and of course he was coaching us along how to do stuff and what to do, and then was giving him feedback, and so it just I was talking to him maybe once a week, plus emailing, and wasn't long after that, maybe 6-7 months later, that's when he hit me up about me and Keith doing investigations in our area, because Mike Mullane was getting a lot of reports from our area, but Mike lived down almost in Mobile, and the type of job he had, he couldn't turn loose to do a lot of research. He was researching mainly where he lived, and so it was hard for him to get up in this part of Alabama. So they asked us, would we do the investigations around the area we lived in, which was pretty much East Central Alabama. And I told him I would, and he told me, he said, "I'm gonna help you with it." And he said, "I ain't gonna stick you out on a tree limb, He said, I'll help you," and that's how it got started. And it wasn't long after that's when the phone went to ringing, or I'd get email from Mr. Mike or Mr. Tall saying, "Hey, this person's seen this. They are willing to talk," and they give me their phone number, and I'd call and follow up with it. And that's when I found out there's a bunch of them around this area, more than I thought.
Well, what were I just gotta just cross my mind. What was the percentage of fake calls compared to real calls when people would call you to come check things out? Was it easy to tell?
I think I only had one that was what you call really fake. I think everybody else was very sincere and truthful. And plus, most of the places I was able to go, we found evidence. We'd either find tracks, or we'd go there at night and we would get whoops or tree knocks, or we'd get calls back to us, or have them come up and catch the eye shine, or smell them. So I've only had one, I think, that was really fake. There was another one. I think they were wanting money. I called these people, and was talking to him. Told him, I said, "Yeah, Mr. Mike told me to give you a call, and said you were having some trouble on your property." And they said, "Well, you know, uh, we want money for story." And I'm going like, "Well, I don't do that. I just take these reports and give them to Mr. Tall, let him, finish them up, and then, put them on the web for people to study." I said, "There's no money changing hands anywhere in this." And they didn't want to talk to me after then. So I said, "Well," and, when I talked to Mr. Tall about it, he said, "Well, one of two things." He said, "Either they're telling a lie or they are trying to make money off what they're doing." He said, "There are some people that do that." And he said, "We'll never know on that one." So he said, "Just, all you can do, let that and be." Um, so that's all I could do. But I think I've only had one that was faked. And I'm not sure if it wasn't something else they were really seeing. Uh, I don't know. That was a hard one to figure out. And then one time the police in Chillisburg tried to throw me off. There was one seen two or three times up there around a big cornfield, and when I called the Chillisburg Police Department to talk to them about it, they told me it was fake. It was some kids were doing that, but the people who were seeing it were also smelling it. They were having dog food missing off their porches. Uh, One woman had it on her back porch one night when she went to feed the cat. And I'm going, some kids want to get shot. You know what I'm saying? If that was kids, I don't think that one was a kid. I think that was the real thing. And I think the cops were trying to play it off, but that's my opinion. Then Mr. Tall, being an ex law enforcement, he tried to call and talk to him. He thought maybe him being ex law enforcement might help. They pretty much done him the same way. So he said they just don't want to get to it, Mark. He said they don't want to deal with that problem.
Right. But
that went on.
What was the crazy experience you had on one of these reports?
Probably the craziest one was a friend of mine actually called me one night, all excited. I mean, he was all excited. Him and his two nephews had been hunting that evening. He put one nephew in a tree stand. Him and his other nephew went up this creek a little piece. They had to go through a cattle gap. When they were going through the cattle gap, they heard something in the creek. It sounded like somebody walking. But he kind of peeped over and never did see nobody else. And they went on up the creek. Well, about dark, they come back down and they got back to the cattle gap and opened the gate. His nephew went to jerking on him, saying, "Look, look." And when he turned around, right there on the edge of the creek bank was one of these creatures standing there peeping out at him. Well, it scared them half to death. And they took off, got the other nephew out of the tree, got on up at the house. And first thing he did was call me. And I couldn't go right over there for a couple of days because I was working, but we went over there 4 days later. Went down went to the tree, and I could tell something had stood behind the tree because everything was mashed down, and plus there was a hole there behind the tree. Because he estimated about 6 foot tall, but when we seen the hole was about 2 foot deep. So this rascal was probably 8 foot tall. I slid off into the creek looking around, darn if I didn't walk upon his footprints, and followed him all the way up the creek, and then found where he went into a cane break. And something told me don't go in that cane break. And I just, all of a sudden, the hair stood up on my neck, and I knew he was in there. Because that was a big, nice tunnel. We kind of left that area because we was uneasy with it, came back down there and found where he had also come off the bank during the night because it was real cold that morning, so the ice was over the water in places, and you could see where he'd walked through the ice. And so that was pretty intense. It was probably one of the first investigations I went on besides Creepy Mountain, and didn't have one I knew that was that close. I could tell he was in there. I just that sixth sense kick in, said don't go in there, And I think he was bedded up in there.
Mm.
So that was one that was intense. The other was a property down in Coosa County, which is a county right below where I live, and me and Adam Bassett was working that one. Uh, and there's a guy I worked with at the time found some footprints down on his property, and so we went down there one night and just going to see if we could hear anything. And that's the first time I got the feeling I needed to get out of there. We'd been there maybe 30 minutes, and I just had that overwhelming feeling we need to go. Adam had the same feeling before I even said anything. He said, "I think we need to go, Mark." I said, "I agree with you." I could see red eyes in places. I heard some strange noises that I ain't heard before again. So I'm not sure what that was. I don't know if that was boogers or something else. It could have been paranormal. Uh, just don't know. Uh, so that was another time I was not feeling good about the situation, and got out of there. So and had several more over the years, dealing with some ghost hunters down in Opelika, Alabama one time. I was ready to pack up and leave from down there too. When I started seeing black figures flying through the air and all that mess, I said, this is getting a little deeper than I want to be. So,
I don't blame you there. I
but,
don't have nothing to do with them things at all.
yeah.
When did you start realizing though this stuff happens in the Bigfoot areas, the Sasquatch areas? When did you start noticing that the strange happens where they're at?
Probably a year or two after I really got into doing the researching, that I realized that these lights, little orbs. I've been seeing orbs a lot during my lifetime because I was a coon hunter. So I was out at a lot of nights, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. We'd see them. A lot of people say gas, all these explanations. Didn't really pay them no attention. Didn't really seem to bother me that much. Seen a lot of people got pictures of them in their backyards and stuff. And then later on, though, I started noticing a lot of times when we had the boogers up around us, these lights would show up. I have seen some as big as basketballs floating around, but most of them like baseball size. Jonathan Odom on Alabama Bigfoot Paranormal caught one on the hunting club that was square looking. That was crazy. It's on his YouTube channel. It's just crazy. It's square. It's like a box floating around. Just I ain't never seen nothing like that. Also, I think, as like I was telling you yesterday, uh, that my wife Rebecca seen something standing in our kitchen one time, and I think there are some entities that follow these things around, and I wonder sometimes if they don't latch on to people,
Yeah.
and you carry them home with you. So there's some other things that goes on. On a lot of the recordings, we used to pick up some crazy stuff. Like I told you, I heard on one say one time Marco when I pulled up the truck. Yeah, that could have been paranormal. I don't know if that was them or not, but they were there too when I did get out of the truck. So,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd say within a year or two when I started realizing they were kind of going hand in hand.
Right. Right. So after investigating, you guys found out that they're at this creepy mountain, and when did you and Keith decide to take it to the next level and start bringing them in and trying to get an interaction without them coming in to you?
Well, there for a while, all we were doing was mainly going up there calling at night. We'd just go up there and do some tree knocks. We would do some calling. Sometimes we'd get a reaction, sometimes we wouldn't. Uh, Plus, we were still hunting up there active, and we had stuff happen while we were hunting. In fact, later on, we found out these things would following us around when we were coon hunting. I think they were doing that to get the coons. They really wasn't following us. They just knew that when we treated coon with our dogs, because most of the time we didn't harvest the coons much, unless somebody just wanted one to eat or something. But we just mainly treat them. I think a lot of times they were, using us as bait for the coons in such a way. I think they would come in as soon as we leave, and they'd catch that coon coming down the tree, or they'd climb the tree and get the coon. But one night we did hear a big ruckus. Probably we done got about 100 yards from the tree back toward the truck, and we heard this big commotion going on down there. And I think one went up the tree and got that coon. I asked Keith then, I said, "You want to turn around and go back and see?" He said, "Oh, heck no. He's done got his dinner. He ain't going to like us coming back down there." So, we left on out and got on back up to the truck. So, it was probably the summer of 08 when we really took it to the next extreme, when we started doing a bait station. We started off with peanut butter in a jar. What we first did was kind of put it there close to the ground. Well, we learned that probably wasn't going to be a good idea with the coons and possums and deer and other animals. So what we did was we ended up taking us a little step ladder with us, and we got us some gutter nails. And most people want to know what gutter nails are. They're about 8 inches long, maybe a little longer, some of them 10. And we would take and get up on the tree somewhere in the 8-9 foot range, and we would just, excuse me, I'm sorry, we would just drive the gutter nail all the way through the peanut butter jar. Then we would come back in a day or two. And one reason we done that was to eliminate coons, deer, other animals. But we would come back, and when we did, the jar would be gone. 9 times out of 10, the gutter nail would be laying at the bottom of the tree. I would still put the ladder up against the tree and climb up there, and the hole would be still just a nice hole. It wasn't watered out. Like if me or you or anybody else, we'd have to water that nail to get it pulled out, to make that hole bigger where the nail would fall out. This would be pulled straight out. Never find the jar again. Coon ain't gonna tote that jar off. No deer gonna tote that jar off. Never found those again. We done that for a while. We left them some corn. Left them watermelon. Got mad about the watermelons one time because we tied that watermelon up in the tree, and I don't know if he couldn't figure out how to untie it, and he got mad, but he smashed that watermelon and didn't eat it either. He just smashed it up against the tree. I think he got mad. I believe that's what took place. But the best one that really blowed our mind and showed us that they had some intelligence was with the Ziploc bags. We started putting like peanut butter jelly sandwiches in them and seal them up and tie them up the tree way up. You come back and find the bag, and the bag would be zipped back up, but the sandwich would be gone. But number two, it wasn't being chewed into just like a coon or a possum or something would do. This was opened, the sandwich took out and sealed back and just laid back where it was. That really blowed our mind. Done that for a while and got a lot of stuff off that. We put cookies in there. We try to stay away from sweets because that seems to really pull coons and stuff in, plus ants. So, we tried to stay more with, the peanut butter, apples. They take all of it. Just the watermelon is the only thing I've seen that time they got mad about. And then one time we left some deer steaks for them way up in a tree. They wouldn't take it. I don't know why they wouldn't take that deer meat. It was some that was real old, and they wouldn't take that deer meat. I don't know if it's because it wasn't fresh or because it'd been froze before. They wouldn't touch it. But the thing was, we even cut it down and throw it in the woods, and it laid there and nothing touched it. It stayed there for like 2 weeks before it finally, rotted away. That was very strange. And a lot of times, there's something we noticed during that time, they would pee in that area. They would urinate in the area we was baiting. And I'm wondering if they were doing that to run everything else off. But I don't know that for a fact. But I think they were putting their scent there where other animals wouldn't even frequent that area.
In our area, we would never find tracks. We would never find a deer print. We wouldn't find maybe a rodent, maybe a squirrel would take a couple little snippets out of an apple, but we would never find tracks of any larger animals or bears or anything in our area, in the area that we're trading at. So we never seen urine, but not to say that they weren't doing it on the outside. Makes sense.
Right, right.
Makes sense. So
Well,
what?
most animals or anything marks their territory,
Right.
and we also found a good track and a knuckle print during that time. And look, there's a little creek right there, and we just happened to stumble on it and made a good cast. Mr. Tall, we sent it out to a guy in Texas. He looked at all the dermal ridges and everything. He said it wasn't human. This one had 4 toes. They believe it may have maybe got cut off because you could see a little, um, like scar tissue. Plus, it was deformed a little bit. The way the toes were, they was kind of funny looking. It wasn't a real big track. It was probably about a 10-inch track. In the knuckle print, you could actually see the hair and the creases in the knuckles and all that. That was real cool. And my friend Keith still has those casts. In fact, I had them on a few weeks ago when I interviewed him on one of the Homestead videos. I showed them. So the guy in Texas, I don't know who he was. I can't remember his name, but he said it definitely wasn't human when he analyzed it. So
What did you guys start learning from the trading with them? What the patterns? Any patterns? Anything like that from trading with them?
well, yeah. I mean, they would came. They would. Let's see. I learned one thing about it. When you came in, they'd come in. I'd hear them. You'd hear them running around. You'd get a whiff of them. So they was kind of like they were waiting on us. So I noticed that pattern. In fact, when I had one run behind me one day, maybe 30, 40 foot, I got a glimpse of him when he went down in the creek bed. So he was real brave or didn't care, one of the two. I don't know which one it was. They in that area at nighttime, because we'd go back and get up there a couple of 100 yards from that area, and they would be in there. You'd hear the tree knocking every now and then, and you'd hear a whoop. And I think that they knew we was right up the hill from them. They would do that. And of course, they were leaving us stuff. It took us a little while to figure it out because we really didn't know what we was looking for. But a lot of times we'd find a little pile of nuts up against a tree. Sometimes we'd find flowers. Of course, my buddy was aggravating me saying I had a girlfriend up there. He said one of them was liking me or something. But then other things, sometimes rocks. Um, one time, a mussel shell laying there to say, and this would always be at the same tree. So it wasn't scattered about. They were bringing it to one certain tree, leaving it there for us. Also, during that time, they put up an X brace there. We hadn't been seeing that thing, and all of a sudden, that X brace showed up. So during that time period, so I don't know. I can't prove they done it, but it's kind of strange. It just showed up at that time, right there where we were feeding at. So I don't know. I mean, I have no idea what those X braces mean. I don't know if they're telling another clan to stay out, or they're trying to tell us something. I don't know. And we done this for about 4 months, and then we kind of started slacking off a little bit on it, just to see. And it seemed like they got a little irritated with us when we kind of slacked off. Seemed like their calls would be a little different at night up there. They'd be a little more agitated, but they never did do nothing. Just But they still followed us around coon hunting. That got to be a pretty regular thing up there.
Did they ever follow you home?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They figured out where I lived at and where Keith lived at.
Was that after the
At the
trade?
time, my place wasn't.
Was that after
Do
the?
what now?
Was that after the trading stop? I'm sorry.
Oh yes, yes. It was probably a 6 months later. They probably were coming earlier and just nobody caught it. My sister-in-law at the time was the one that caught it. She was babysitting for us one night. My ex-wife at the time was working out of town, and I was working midnight shift, and I get a call from her about 12 o'clock at night because she went out to smoke on my back porch, and uh, she called me and want to know why there's a bunch of apes in my backyard for. That's what you mean there's a bunch of apes. She said, Lord, she said, and then she kind of held the phone out where I could hear. And yeah, I mean, you could hear the whooping and you could hear the screeching. And I mean, it was just all kind of racket out there. And she said, your horses are backed up over here against the fence, close as they can get to the house, looking out towards your pasture, and your dogs are laid up on the porch, up against the wall, as far as they can get. And she said, "What is this in your backyard?" And I said, "Well, it's she said, "It's Bigfoot, ain't it?" And I said, "Yeah." So that was the first time I really realized they were coming to the house, and they never bothered nothing there at the home. Um, they left me some dead squirrels, looked like they would break them in half and lay them on my fence by my gate where I'd go out to my horse barn. A few times they moved my horse trailer around. At first, I thought my horses maybe were doing it, and then I realized them horses couldn't do that. Uh, don't know why they're moving that trailer around. Then I had a stump I'd been trying to get up down in the woods, uh, and they would, one day I'd been working on it and I had to quit. Part of it was still in the ground. A few days later, when I come back, it was pulled up out of the ground, sitting on the side of the hole with a come along still hooked to it. So, um, if it had been a buddy or somebody that had done that for me, I would have known about it. They would have said something about it. So I don't know if, I can't prove it was them either, because I wasn't there to see what happened, but that was strange. This was a big stump. Uh, what it was pine kindling. It was a big old stump. It was full of heart, and I was trying to get it out because that type of kindling there was very good kindling. So, that lasts me a year, just that one stump. So, but and there was other things that went on. Sometimes my gates would be open. Uh, my ex-wife at the time, sometimes some morning she'd have to leave at 4:30 in the morning, heading to work, and because she had about an hour drive, and sometimes she would get glances of something out in the wood line. But as far as really bothering anything, they didn't. Now they stirred up some of the neighbors too during that time. People thought we was having peeping toms and stuff. I think they were visiting some of the other neighbors and had some of them shook up. So
Tell everybody about the story of the deer and the watermelon. That's an amazing story. If you could share that
oh,
with me.
well, of course at the time on this place I was raising a lot of crops, and I had that year I had planted a lot of yellow meated watermelons, and my friend Keith on up in the fall. He had a couple of run-ins, around, I guess, with them around some green patches. I think they was ill because he was there hunting, but he ended up carrying part of a deer carcass back up there to where all this commotion went on one day and left it for him. A few days later, he went back and there's a watermelon sitting there. And he calls me. He said, "I want you to come to the club and see this. I'm not touching it. I want you to see where this is sitting at and see if this is one of your watermelons." Because he said, "It looks just like one of your watermelons that you raised this year." I said, "Okay, I'll be on the way." Of course, then I lived right there at the club, which I'm still right at the club now. I'm only like 2 miles from it. But back then, I was like an eighth of a mile from it. So, uh, and I was only like a mile from the road that went up into the club. So I was up there in 10 minutes. Two, back then, our roads were in very good shape and you could travel pretty fast on 'em. I got over where he was at, walked up the little road to the green patch where he had laid the deer carcass. Deer carcass was gone. And there lay a watermelon, just like the ones I grow. Uh, it was very strange. Of course, I remembered my father talking about way back yonder. They would store them under their beds and stuff, where light couldn't hit them and it stayed cool. And watermelons would last on up into the winter because, like he talked about, a lot of times they would eat watermelon around Christmas time and New Year's. They'd pull one out from under the bed, be just as good as it was, in the summer. So, um, I think they know how to preserve some stuff.
Right.
You if they're part human, like most people's thinking they are, and they got more intelligence than we think they do. They're just not a regular animal. They got some intelligence and they got a language, all that. So there's a lot of caves on the club. Also, a lot of pine thickets. You could go bury something in that pine thicket, sun's not going to penetrate it and it stay cool in there. Uh, and we found corn. I found corn one time in a tree, and it wasn't somebody baiting or nothing. This was in a hollow tree. This corn was just as good. I mean, of course, it was dried out, but it was up in a hollow tree. Squirrel and nothing had touched it. Coon or nothing. That's be very, if anything's on the ground, they're going to find it. They're going to eat it. This hadn't been ate and touched, and nobody else hunted in this area. And I went back a few days later, and that corn was gone. And like I said, I didn't find it scattered out on the ground. I didn't even find the shucks or nothing. So I think they were storing it there in that holler tree. I think and I believe it was them. I mean, I didn't see them put it there or take it, but I kind of watched that area for a while, and I never seen nobody else hunting that area that the hunting season. So I think it was them.
How old was the watermelon? How many months was it between they were harvested and the deer was left?
That year, the watermelons came in August. I had a late planting year because it was kind of real wet in our spring and first of the summer, so I had late planting. So they started maturing in August, and this was around the middle of November when our gun season come in Alabama. So about the 1st of December. So you're talking about 3 to 4 months when that showed up.
That doesn't happen.
It had a pretty good cool fall that year. We had some early frost come in. It stayed pretty good. It was a very nice fall that year here, and because usually we go from summer to winter, but we actually had a fall that year.
It's pretty amazing. We're going to open up questions for Mark. If you guys please put them in capital letters. I have one here from Mr. Al Santariga, the Godfather himself. How far away from the location do you live from Creepy Mountain is what he's referring to.
Right now, presently, I'm about 2 miles to the east of it, to the East Ridge. And when I was living on the south side of the mountain, I was 1/8 of a mile from the border of the private land. The place is owned by a timber company, so it's private property. It's been in a deer hunting lease since 1996. And I lived right at the foot of that side of the south side of the mountain. But right now I live roughly 2 miles to the east side of it. It's a little group of mountains, some of the last mountains in Alabama, part of the Appalachians. I think the tallest ridge is in the 1,400 feet, and that's on the east side. The west side's a little lower. So I've pretty much lived around these mountains all my life. In fact, when I grew up 3 miles from them. I'm only live 3 miles right now from where I grew up. So I've been in this whole little area most of my life right in here.
Okay. We got Country in the City ask, hey, Mark, have you heard of anyone who's tried shooting one?
Not personally, I haven't. Of course, I've heard it on other people's YouTube channels. I do know, well, I take that back. Hold on. I just thought about something from way back. My friend in Coosa County, where I went to his property, his grandfather had a big apple orchard. He figured out something was raiding his apple orchard because that was one of his main cash crops. And he went and sat in that patch one night. I think this was in the 40s. He went and sat in that patch. And he got a glimpse of something. Of course, I think he thought it was a person. And I think he didn't directly shoot at it. He just kind of shot up in the air to scare it. Of course, I think that's when it let out a big roar. And he realized it wasn't human and it took off running. So But I don't think he. When I was talking to my friend about it, I don't think he actually aimed the gun at the figure he was looking at. I think he just shot up in the air to actually scare it. But as far as anybody else, I don't know of anybody I personally know that has shot at one or anything.
All right, she beat me to the punch. I was gonna ask you this at the end, but she's got it in. So you win,
Okay.
blue-eyed. Can you tell us about what happened with the finding Bigfoot?
Well, that was very interesting. Of course, they came here and early 2013. Of course, hunting season was already out, was getting into spring turkey season. They came, and I will say, all of them were very nice people. Uh, uh, Listened to what we had to say. Of course, they came here for the thermal that Paul Hunsley was actually the one that caught that thermal. He had come up on the club with Adam and uh, another guy. I can't remember the guy from Georgia. I'll think of his name in a minute. But Adam asked me, was it okay for them to come to the club? I said, sure. Uh, the night they actually caught the thermal, I was not there. I was at work. But anyway, later on, they caught wind of that thermal and they contacted Paul, and he contacted me and Adam and asked could they come. And we talked about it a little while and decided, yeah. That's where the name really Keep Creepy Mountain comes from. That the real name of those mountains, I'm not going to tell, but some of the locals call it Creepy Mountain, and then we kept it as Creepy Mountain just to where people wouldn't learn that location, where we wouldn't have people trying to come up in there and stir up stuff or make fake stuff or get the landowners mad, because you don't want them ill about stuff. But it turned out pretty good. They got some knocks, I think, what I remember. One night I didn't go with the crew. I was down there with their food crew, and the guys who set up all the equipment and all. And I was telling them, I said, all those cameras and lights y'all got up there, you ain't gonna have no booger action. And I remember him saying, yeah, I know, but this is what our living is. I said, I understand what you're saying. He said, we do catch some stuff, but I was parked in behind their truck, and I decided to take me a little nap because them four wanted to go up there by themselves with the cameraman, and I understood that. And so I just stood down there, stayed in my truck, and I was sitting in my truck, by half asleep, and I kept hearing something tinking, like a tink on top of my truck, and it kept on going on and on. And I finally just kind of started looking around, and about that time, I got the glimpse of one up the hill from me. I could see him up there in the hill, in the silhouette. And I eased out of the truck and I walked up there to them guys. I said, you might want to radio up there and tell them there's one down here at the truck up on top of this hill. Of course, he told them, but they didn't come down there. Uh, Now, Bobo done a night investigation by himself and him and his cameraman up there. Um, and the experience they had was they were camped out at the lake. We have a 7-acre lake up there. They were actually camped out, but they had parked their truck about a mile away, and they were walking the road to their tent. The cameraman realized that the batteries he had were about dead, so he went back to the truck to retrieve new batteries. He was on his way back. He's coming down the road. He seen something squatted in the road. He thought it was Bobo for a minute looking at something, and he kept calling out to him. Well, Bobo didn't answer. All of a sudden, Bobo stands up and walks in the woods. So this cameraman just keeps, walks right on down there and turns and goes in the woods with him and says, Bobo, what are you looking at? And by all of a sudden, Bobo answers from down the road about 100 yards, says, what, who are you talking to? Or something like that. And the guy realized then that wasn't Bobo. It just went in the woods. And of course, he freaked out. Uh, and he said, man, I wish I'd had that camera run. He said, I would have captured him the whole time on the camera. And he said, I just thought it was Bobo. And it freaked the cameraman out. Of course, Bobo come right back up there, and they did find some sort of impressions in the road there where it had sit at. I think it also urinated there too. I think I remember them talking about it urinated there. But that's basically how it went. They didn't have a lot of action like they thought they was going to. One reason I think, when you got that many people and you got lights and you got all that going on, that just sent them, the boogers deeper in the woods, and excuse me. But, of course, I had one down at the truck with me for a little while, and of course, Bobo and his cameraman had that experience. But they looked at the footage of Paul's thermal, and later on, I got an email from Cliff, and he said, "I think you got a booger there." He said, when we went down to the tree and looked at the elevation of the ground, and he said that sun gun was 8-9 foot tall, which we already kind of knew that because we had done it ourselves before they even showed up there. Because we told them it was probably an 8-9 foot tall one, and you can tell he's broad. And I think when I got in the thermal, when we was trying it out, Adam told me he said. He said, "Mark, you look like a little kid compared to this thing." And I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1", overweight, but big shouldered and all that. And he said, "You look like a kid standing down there." So we knew then that was 8 or 9 foot, booger. So
Nice. You got to see them. Did you? You got. Let me start over again. Blah 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 blah. All right, deep breath. You've seen these guys on a regular basis at this area. Do you think that one throwing the rocks at your truck knew who you were and was letting you know where he was, just to say, "Ha, these guys are all up there, and I'm down here with you, throwing stones at you, maybe playing the game with
yeah,
you"?
yeah, they knew my truck. I think they get used to certain trucks. I think they got used to me and Keith's trucks and Adam. I think they definitely learned the squeaks and the noises that your truck makes. Um, when they were coming to my house, I realized which they was probably already coming down in that bottom in that area because they was coming down there because a lot of times they was people would have stuff go missing like calves and hogs and stuff. But one night we were standing up on the club and a friend of mine was with me and he had left his truck at my place and he needed something out of it. So I just told him, "Take my truck and go back to my house and get it." Well, there were some other people and I just sat up there with them. I listened to him leave the club, go all the way down the dirt road, get on the pavement, go down the pavement, turn into my driveway and pull into my house. And I said, "Lord have mercy." I said, "No wonder they came straight to the house. They could hear it. They could hear my truck leave that property, go down that paved road, and then turn in my driveway and come back in there. They knew it right off the bat." And which they was already probably coming down in there too. But so yeah, I think they get used to your trucks. One night, one left a big handprint on my truck, big oily handprint. We were coon hunting and we come back out and you could smell where he'd been there. I think he'd been urinating in that area. Because that's something I noticed a lot. Those up there urinated around us a lot. I don't know what that meant. I don't know if they was marking us or what they were doing. I hadn't figured that one out. But could have been protection for us. I don't know. They could have been protecting us from another one or something, or saying, "Hey, leave these guys alone." I don't know. Or they could be just making fun of us. "Hey, you're gonna smell our urine." So I don't know on that one,
Nice.
but
That's
but that was
awesome.
real interesting.
Our hours, like I told you, was going to fly right by, and we are at the end of the hour already, my friend. I'm going to start
I
asking this
understand.
all my guests that approach, because I'm really about awareness and people that do not believe or need to be aware that these things could be 10 feet away from them in the hiking trails or your backyard, or like you said, if you own a farmstead, they're watching you grow the food. They're going to come in and eat your food. What would you say to someone to make them more aware of these guys, creatures, beings, whatever you want to call them, being in the woods right next to them?
Well, it's like I told you when I first seen mine. I came into what you call a reality check, where I realized there's more on this earth than what we've been told or what we know about. Um, it's hard to say what to do. Of course, best thing I think is not to engage with them if you can help it. As far as acting aggressive toward them, I think you can tell them to leave if they're bothering you or your property. I think you can say, "Look here, we need to live peaceably together. Leave my stuff alone, and I might leave you some stuff. Or uh, there's people that talk about rebuking them in Jesus' name, and some of them said they've done that and they left. I have a good friend that done it with them one night because he thought they were getting aggressive, and he asked them in Jesus' name to stop and leave, and he got quiet and they left. He said even the feeling left the air. So, um, but if they show up at your property, um, you know, some of them are real curious. Some of them are just coming there to get food. It's hard to say what to do with them. I mean, I think we got one coming here now at this place every now and then, not really bothering anything. Um, but if he started bothering stuff, I would, change my direction with him a little bit, or her, or whatever which one it is. I'd get a little more respectful with them, but forceful with them. I think you can do both at the same time, and they kind of get the hint. Um, I wouldn't go out the door shooting at one unless he was trying to jump on me. That'd be the only way. If he's trying to jump on me, yeah, I'm gonna shoot him or attempt to. But if he's trying to run away, I'm not gonna shoot at him. I mean, I wouldn't shoot at a human running away from me because he's trying to get away from you. Uh, I would treat them the same way. Uh, but if they're trying to harm me or somebody else, that's a whole different ball game.
Okay. Got one more question here.
I hope I answered that question correctly.
So. It makes sense, though, and I've never heard that say, if something's running away from you, they're running away from you. There's no sense of shooting at it. They don't want to be they're on their way out,
Well, I'm kind of like this. I don't want him and his family showing back up later for revenge. I've had several people say, "Man, I always think about before you pull that trigger on one because there's another one somewhere close by," and there's been instances where somebody shot one and the other ones come out of the woodwork and tried to kill that person, or I heard there have been some killed, but um, it's like most anything. If it's trying to run away, I'm not going to pursue it. You know, just if it's trying to get away from me, it's trying to get away from me. Yeah.
Well, I agree. I don't know if this is relation. Is this the wife? Honey? Do they like honey? Or I don't know. Do you know who that fresh is?
No, I sure don't.
Okay, but he just did a show on his channel the other night about the bees and the Bigfoot. Is that correct? Am I correct?
Maybe so. I don't know. They, when I was telling about the pasture having that, and I meant to clarify two things, and I will too on my YouTube channel Friday when that fireside tales come out. I did ask him. Well, he told me he prayed over that beehives there. Of course, he didn't have no problem. And number two, he did say, I did mention to him what he thought about Bigfoot, and his answer was very serious. He said, I could very well see that happening. And he didn't go no further with it. So he didn't sit there and laugh, look crazy at me. He had a serious look. But yeah, I think they get into honey. They probably get in a lot of the wild honey. They probably find it out in the woods and get into it, because some of the swarms will be up in hollow trees, and they probably climb up in there and reach in and grab a comb and snatch it out and get out of there. So yeah, I think they do like honey. They're opportunists. They're opportunists.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you work the third shift, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. And I'm glad that Pat hooked us up and got a new friendship. Yeah. And we will definitely have you back because we haven't even touched half of what Mark knows about Sasquatch, and he's got so much more to share with everybody. So I want to just say thank you, and you got any final words for anybody?
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate you listening to what I have to say, and I appreciate everybody that's been backing me on to doing the YouTube, and appreciate Blue Eyed Northern and Joe and all my other friends in the Bigfoot world, and just my regular friends for backing me on this. It's something that a lot of people were pushing me to start doing to get a history of it. Like I've told some people, I'm doing some of this just for my kids, where they have a history of it one day, where they can go back and see what I was doing sometimes when I wasn't at home. So, but my kids used to go with me some. They've experienced some of it. My kids experienced some, but biggest thing is they are out there. I got an opinion what I think they are, but I kind of hold that opinion with most people. I know they're fresh in blood, but there's some other things to them too. Um, and
Yeah, we'll have to save that for another show because
that's
that's
it.
all.
I look forward to do what now.
I said we're gonna have to save that for a whole nother show because that's a whole nother world that'll take another
All
2 hours to get that too.
Oh yeah, we probably could talk 8 or 9 hours on that one. So and but I
Sure.
appreciate everybody that's on the Homestead channel backing us, and I hope I hope some people learn some stuff from it, because that's another thing besides saving this for my kids for history one day. I want people to learn from it, not just about the Bigfoot, but the homesteading too. Uh, where you can maybe be a little more self-reliant uh, than having to depend on the grocery stores and so much. So, but I really enjoyed it, and I appreciate you having me on, and look forward to it next time. And I've really enjoyed it, and I'm especially gonna support you too. Uh, I hate to few times that I logged in, I was an hour late. I kept forgetting you were Eastern and I'm Central, so I would log in to listen to the show, and Lord, it was over in 10 minutes, and I said, "Man, I got to keep remembering he's Eastern time." So,
It's all
but
good.
I got it in my head now.
I'm gonna link all your stuff in the bio from this video tomorrow once it posts. So
Okay,
everybody go over to his channels. Please like, sub. It's free. It doesn't cost
no,
any.
it don't cost a thing.
It's all free, and they're very interesting. Especially me coming from the city, you learn a whole lot of different stuff, and it's educational. It's everything. The channel's got everything, and we will link it all in the description and the bio. And please go over there and like and sub. It helps out tremendously just to get the word out, awareness. The more likes, the more subs, the more you get in the algorithm, and then the more people get to see it come up.
Right.
And it's worth that means the world to us because everybody works hard at this, and every little bit helps for sure.
Well, I think you have a very good channel, Chris, and because I went back and listened to them, and I like what you're doing, and I've liked the guests you've had on, and what I like about it too, you like most people, you're open minded. So that has a lot to do, being open minded about stuff, and treating people with respect. And that's what all of us need, to treat each other with respect and be open minded.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, especially coming for you. And I'm looking forward to coming to visit you in Flat Rock one day. We're going to do the Alabama
Oh,
tour.
yes, of course.
Yeah, and
Of course.
I'm looking forward to that already. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mark Green, I'll see you backstage, hang out a little bit, okay?
Y'all take
All right.
care, everybody.
Mr. Mark Green, everybody. All right, all right, all right. Well, thank you all for joining me tonight. Thank you for keeping it cool in the chat. Thank you to all my moderators. I really appreciate it. I am starting to see a lot of regular faces each week in the chat room, and I appreciate all of you showing up each Tuesday night. Again, I had the big news at the beginning of the show was this. I will be doing a show at 6 o'clock on Thursday, starting in August on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. It's going to be Discover Sasquatch Live, and it's going to be basically the same setup here. Go on to Mark's channels. I will leave his links in the descriptions, and go over there and like and sub and visit all his stuff. They're working hard. Once again, I thought it was another great show, and I appreciate you all. And you know the deal. As my buddy Larry's tells you, get in the woods, people.